Welcome to your home for startups and entrepreneurs, Tall Poppies, and today we're playing the first half of our initial interview with Sarah Ann Mann. She is adamant about creating a difference in consumables and bringing some of the old-fashioned elements of the open market in a compassionate way. Enjoy the first half of this interview. Hit subscribe, hit like, hit the notification bell so we can let you know all the latest. We know that you're just going to love this interview. Enjoy. Today's guest is Sarah Mann, and she is quite an entrepreneur for her age. She has a lot more business under her belt than one would assume for a young lass. So she has, by Sarah Ann, that's Sarah with an H, Ann without an E, and that's really important. So welcome, Sarah.
Thank you. Hello.
So what is your business?
So my business is a design house, which sounds fancier than it is, really. I'm the designer, and I have created a couple of products called Shrugs. And my particular Shrugs are very versatile. So you can wear them in several different ways, and they're high quality, and then a part of that restorative commerce that I'm so passionate about.
So we're going to explore that a little bit later. So what is your space in with the Shrugs? Is it knitwear? Is it consumer? So what would you describe your niche, your space?
So right now it's in this would be a luxury accessory. Because of it's a luxe fiber that we use, so it's going to last a very long time, and it's super soft and all that. So it's an accessory. It's not a coat. It's not pants. It's something to add on over that. The cool, unique thing about it that I designed it for myself was I was sick of bulky things to wear as the weather got more uncomfortable. And so this kind of covers more bases than having those many different coats and tops and all that. So
if you got into the elevator with someone, what would be your one-liner to describe your business?
I'm working on that, but I would say it's quality, versatility with a conscience.
Interesting. But it also seems to have a bit of a history to it too, because this Shrugs are not anything new, are they?
No, they've been around. I'm a student of history. I love art history, went to college for that. And there's something that, if you've seen like the TV show Outlander or something like that, they have a team that's really good at historical accuracy for what she's wearing. Some things aren't completely accurate, but that's not important. They wear these things that Victorian era, they had capelets. Further back in history, especially in Scotland, Ireland, England, where it's cold, they had a lot of garment layers that they wore here down. But when it was cold and they were outside gathering herbs or whatever, they had this little kind of shoulder capelet shawl thing. And it just came to about here and kept this area warm. And I looked at that, and I'd always admired it, and it seemed to be something that would fit my problem of always being chilly around here all throughout the year, and not finding things like a poncho's too big, and a scarf has its problems, and the infinity scarf really wasn't, it was just everything on the market wasn't just quite right. And I'm kind of a princess in the pea when it comes to a product working for me. And so I'd done some research on what already existed out there, and I couldn't find something on the market. So I had it, I kind of drew it up myself, and had a friend who's an avid knitter, and she enjoys knitting more than I do. And so I had her knit one up for me, and then I tested it out and wore it. And then I would go back to her and be like, you need to make this longer, and can we do this? And because she's good at knitting, she can do that without a pattern. And so we worked on that for a while until she didn't want to do it anymore. We got busy, and I was still obsessed with it. So I hired another knitter, and we just kept working on it until I was really happy with it.
So is it light enough to wear during summer? And it seems to have an application for mums who are breastfeeding.
Absolutely. So that was an unexpected surprise because I designed this a few years ago and I'm not breastfeeding anymore. My son is 10. And so I gifted one to a friend of mine who's also a designer in Sacramento. And she had gifted me a belt. So I was like, well, yeah, here we go. This is what we do. And I gifted her one, and she got back to me a month later, and I didn't really expect her to wear it in Sacramento in July. I just didn't, think of that, but she did, and she said, no, I love it. I love it for breastfeeding because it's light and breathable. It's the only thing that, because her office is really chilly with the air conditioning. Right. And she said, I'm already wearing it, and then I can just easily access, and
it's soft,
and it's super soft. And then another friend of mine, she just told me 2 days ago that it's the only material her baby will allow close to her face.
So we'll just quickly touch on what the material is, and then I want to get back to the business, and then we'll dive back into the reasons for the fiber that you're using. So what is this absolutely soft and exquisite? Oh my God, it's just and what is it made from?
So this is baby alpaca fiber, and so that's a marketing term. It's from adult alpacas.
It seems like it's softer than cashmere.
Yeah,
even.
It is competing now. It back in the 80s, it was coined kind of as the poor man's cashmere, but really there's nothing secondary about it. It competes with cashmere on many levels. I think that there's certain cashmeres that might be considered slightly softer, but when you're comparing how breathable, how light, the quality, how long it'll last, and then considering sustainability and profitability and all the other things that matter. It can't just be, not only is it a quality fiber for the customer, but it needs to be profitable for the business, and then it needs to be sustainable.
And that's something we'll go on as we'll touch, because there's some really interesting facts about
the fiber,
alpaca versus even cashmere. There's an interesting story there.
Yes.
Where she mentioned something like blood cashmere almost.
Yeah.
We'll save that juicy part for later. So, so you've been in business before, and so what was the business that you were in before with your husband? How old were you when you got into that?
I was 22.
22. And what was it?
We owned we bought a wine store. What it wound up becoming was different, but basically we got married. I was 21, and we had jobs. And I always thought there was something wrong with me because I started working as a teenager, like everybody, and hated going to work. Every time I got my schedule, I was just like, ugh. And sometimes I'd get so full of anxiety, I'd throw up before work. Any job I had, I just hated someone telling me what to do and when to do it. And so, but we had jobs and we needed to pay bills, and we're a new married couple, and we were going backwards every month, and we weren't eating out or going to the movies. It was looking pretty bad. So my husband's always had that entrepreneurial spirit, and I was raised in a family that I didn't even know that word, really. I always kind of assumed that being an entrepreneur meant you would get a bunch of money and it cost a bunch of money to start a business. And really it's more of an attitude and a spirit. And then especially with tech today, you don't have to have a bunch of money to start a company. So long story short, we were going, because of our financial thing, we had one asset, and that was our house, and we were going to put another mortgage on it to either send me back to college or buy a business that had become available, which was our favorite wine shop, and we were customers of.
So this is it sounds like it was really risky for you, because you're already in tenuous situation.
Yes.
And yet, despite that, you're still considering going into purchasing a business.
Yeah.
So how was that for you, not coming from an entrepreneurial background? What was the response of your family? Were you full of doubt, or did you have confidence? Or looking back,
I would say ignorance is bliss in that situation to a degree. So starting out the way we did, I'm creative, but I didn't really know. I didn't have a really sure path of like what kind of artist or whatever I would do with that creativity. So the option of going back to school, I was like, well, I love art history, but I don't know what I would do with that. And then this idea was that college is a big debt that is really hard to pay off. That was something we didn't want looming over our heads for a long time. And so that that path was looking bleaker. And the unknown of starting a business, my husband's idea was, well, if we don't work it, then we'll know what happens is it won't grow. And if we work it, there is an opportunity that it will grow. And I said, well, what's the worst that could happen? And I always ask that question in every scenario. It's just part of who I am. I'm a worst case scenario kind of person.
Well, you have to.
Yeah. And I was like, well, what's the worst that could happen? Say something unexpected happens, I get sick or something, and we just don't grow the business. He's like, well, then we'll lose the house because we'll have 2 mortgages on it. And I was like, I'm looking around at this old farmhouse that lets rain in when you don't want it. And I was like, okay, that's a risk I'm willing to take. We can always rent an apartment or whatever. That's totally survivable. So
you saw that at that stage that you could recover from that you weren't hampered by, well, I'm just so old. So the sunk costs weren't overwhelming for you.
No, I thought we could, and most financial things, even now, I'm in a house I really do enjoy, and I like fixing it up, and it's only cosmetic things that it needs. Even then, I'm like, well, if we lost that house, if I invested in something and it didn't work out, it's recoverable, because now I know so much more that I could do something quicker about it. I'm not starting from zero.
So the return on investment just for you as a person in this endeavor was massive.
Yes.
But when you went and bought this business, you bought what was your investment?
It was a couple thousand and then inventory.
So that gave you the building?
The building was a rent.
Okay.
And that was a little bit of an obstacle because we were so young, and the company that the real estate agent that was dealing with us renting it, he's like, you guys are really green, but we're going to allow it. And so they, I believe they sublet it to us in the beginning, and then we were able to take it over. So even then, a lot of people, like our parents, told us, what are you doing? You shouldn't be doing this. This is crazy. And Russell and I were like, it's crazy not to. This is the best option, right? This is amazing. And
because it fit in with what you were wanting to do. I mean, you loved the shop. You love wine.
Yep.
And because Russell, we're going to be interviewing him at sometime in the future, has a brewery.
Yes.
Bombastic Brewing, which that's really exciting. So he's one of those really upcoming microbrewers around here. So
yeah.
Did you just when you started this, had you had any children that time?
He was 3 at the time. He's my stepson. And we also, when I married Russell, it was just like, poof, really fast. House, child, jobs, like go, go, go. A lot of responsibility. And it was good though. Like it's good to have those. I really liked that time of growing up and realizing the path I took was the exact right path for me at the time.
So as you started, did you have a sense that you were really exploring your potential?
I just was, no. It was, we bought it and it went through, and it was kind of me going, oh, this is happening. Okay, this is happening, I guess. And so because we mortgaged the house and we were just like, the old owners were they started it as a hobby, and the hobby got out of control for them and they didn't want to work it anymore. And so they were going to just close the doors, and we thought it was an amazing opportunity. We enjoyed it, and if we enjoyed it, I'm sure everybody else enjoyed it. So that was kind of our thinking. And my husband, to maintain paying the bills, kept his job, and I quit my job and maintained the store. So it was crazy though, because I had never run a store before, and the first day they left, the owners said that they were going to help train me. They were like, "This is how the register works, bye." That was really...
So there was no POS, there was...
No, it was a register and wine.
And no inventory other than on paper, or?
Yeah, they counted the inventory, and they had counted the inventory kind of sloppily. So we had to recount it later. And then that was also the weekend of wine club delivery. So there was a wine club there, and that was a nice way to pay. The wine club covered the hard costs for keeping the lights on and things like that. That was a really good thing that we had considered when we bought it, that it was breaking even and paying for itself. So we weren't buying something that we still needed to build up. And it practically turnkey, right? Mm-hmm. So, but the crazy part was they had ordered the wine for the wine club, and I had to put it in the shelves. And there was about 100 members, not quite. And that was also the night of the free wine tasting. And then people are talking about these like coupons or something that the previous owner had given out. And we had to decide whether we were going to honor them or not. And because of the small town aspect, and because if I was a customer, I would want this to be honored. So we had honored these things, and we lost a little bit of money on that, but we had gained a lot more in relationship with our customers. And so for, I think the whole of the time that we owned that company, we did not do any marketing, any traditional marketing. So we didn't pay for advertising or anything. It was all word of mouth and reputation.
So what did you learn? You and Russell start this company. Mm-hmm. You've functionally got a brand new marriage. Mm-hmm. You've got this whole brand new situation in life. That's stressful, trying to negotiate that.
Yes.
As well as business. So did it fall into place, or did you have to work things out, and what was the process?
Yes, a lot of working things out. It did not naturally flow. I mean, we do have very complementary personalities, but I was at the time way more conservative, and he has always been more of a risk taker because he's better at math than I am, and I'm much better than I was. But at the time, we'd sell 2 bottles of wine. I'd want to order 2 bottles of wine. We'd sell 2 bottles of wine to him. He'd order 5 or 6 or 10, being like, well, we sold it and we can sell more. And so that's one of many arguments we'd have, where I'm trying to purchase the wine because the first 2 years I was running everything. And then anytime he wasn't working at his day job, he would come and be in the middle. And so I'm kind of like, oh, wait, this is my territory. I've been, charged and I am responsible for this company. And he's like, yeah, but it's a partnership. And so we had to figure out what our skill sets were together and then respect them. So when I stopped doing purchasing, it had taken a while for me to see that he was stronger at that. But once I saw that it was good for him and good for the company, I backed out of that. And I was really happy to actually not do it anymore. A lot of those things were fear-based at first. He was afraid that I didn't know what I was doing in certain things that were my skill set. Once he learned that these were strengths of mine, he backed out of that. And then a lot of our tension and arguments went away. But for that partnership, and then I've seen it in other partnerships, it was really important for us to learn where our strengths were and to get out of the other person's way and just let them do that. And so trust and respect for that was, once those things fell into place through a lot of hard work, then it got a lot more fun.
Yeah, it's a reciprocal respect and reciprocal responsibilities. So, and that takes a lot of discipline for some people to, you know, acknowledge that in other people.
Yes.
And in a team and a marriage, because marriages and businesses together sometimes don't.
Yes.
They're like oil and water.
Yes. Well, and we had learned later, we started, so our business eventually wound up being a 3-tier thing. So we owned, what we had started with a retail wine shop that had a club. We kept that, but we added beer because that was, we could see that was going up. Beer hadn't become this like artisanal, sought after market yet. It was coming though. So we added on beer. That really grew the company. Then we added, I was able through Idaho, they have different laws than other states, but we were able to get a liquor license because I could see that wine and beer was okay, but people wanted that experience together and other people wanted to do cocktails, and I could see that artisanal cocktails were on the rise too, so we added that. So essentially we had 3 separate businesses all under one roof, and every time we'd start a new leg of the business, it was, I wish I had known what I was doing at the time, but it was just ignorance is bliss, so I'm just gonna go for it because it's the right thing to do, not really seeing how much work was in it. And now I realize I was starting a whole new business at the time. So we had the retail sector, then we added the hospitality sector with the bar, and then we added the shipping sector, and that strengthened the company so that when the say the shipping and the retail were going crazy because it's Christmas time, but the bar might have had its slow moments. Well, our profitability was still going really strong. And then in the summer, the bar was going great and the shipping was going great and the retail was a little slow. So, yeah, I'm really glad we added those 3 tiers to strengthen the business, but just for my own stamina's sake, I should have gone into it knowing like I am starting a whole new business again under one roof. So
but
yeah,
that's a reality a lot of people don't realize.
Yeah.
So, but you've got this experience with scalability.
right.
Scaling,
So now I've learned.
Yeah. and so you know what you're in for.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we'll go into boots. So I'm curious about. So you started with the inventory and taking over the rent. And it was a few $1,000s, basically, you said it was?
Yeah, and then the inventory, which was like 10,000.
Okay, so you had it for 10 years?
Mm-hmm.
So if you took out all the profits you took out to live on and everything else like that, what was your return on investment?
So I can't...
Generally.
Gosh, it was... some of it I can't put into numbers just because instead of going to like a business college or something like that, I learned real-time business experience. I mean, I don't know what that's worth except for that I feel
and that's interesting
so much stronger.
you said that instead of a number. So you see that as a return on investment?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But it was a profitable endeavor.
Absolutely, it
Yeah.
was. So not only were we able to keep the house that we had mortgaged and get that paid off, it was able to get us another house that we live in. So now we're able to rent that other home off and
you fixed the leaks.
yes. Oh yes. So it's helped us build our portfolio. We saw that business as a learning opportunity, but also we knew that we were going to sell it eventually someday. We weren't going to be keeping this for the whole of our lives, especially since we bought it in our 20s. And imagining being 50 and still owning this business we were like, no, we just don't want to.
So is it much like owning a pub? Is it like you don't, or being a dairy farmer, that you don't really get a break?
Yeah, yes. So I've learned so much more now. We were, at the time, this was a learning lesson. At the time, it was just my husband and I, and then sporadically some family members or a volunteer. So at the time, we didn't have, probably in the 4 or 5 year mark, we weren't making so much that we could justify employees yet. And so it was family that we'd, pay what we could and things like that. So when we realized we had to get employees, my husband, it was the Christmas party. And so we'd throw these big Christmas parties every year, and it was just a customer appreciation party. So it was free wine, small samples of wine, which is crazy because everybody's going to show up. Yes. We were like, oh, maybe a few people. No, like half the town shows up, and it gets crazy. So it's a really fun time, and it actually makes quite a lot because they're there and they buy wine because they're there and it's Christmas and there's another party they're going to go to and they'll bring wine. And so it was a great night, crazy night. And on that particular night, my husband had some sort of episode, and to this day they don't know what it was, but he collapsed and went to the hospital, and they put him in the stroke unit because they weren't quite sure, but they thought maybe one side was weaker, and it just seemed like maybe some stroke symptoms. And so it was really scary because that was at our busiest time of the year. We never took off holidays or weekends or anything like that. In fact, if we changed anything in the store or needed to rearrange things, we'd wait till Sunday night when we were closed. And work throughout the night to open Monday because we just couldn't imagine losing any money by being closed ever. And so I'm working the store with some help from my father-in-law while my husband's in the hospital. It was a really stressful time. And we realized we had not budgeted ourselves any leeway for life at all. And it was really risky for us to do that, but when we learned the hard, like, oh my goodness, you have to budget life into your business. It's not healthy to do otherwise. That's
an interesting way you framed it, because you've got to budget life into your business, not that you're budgeting business into your life, which is what I do now. Yeah.
I would say I've learned to reprioritize things much better now.
That's really interesting. So again, you hadn't budgeted life into your business. Mm-hmm. So how long was Russell off?
Months, probably 3 months.
And how old were you?
I was, my son was 4.
So it's just a year after you started this?
No, my son was, I think that happened, I was 28 at the time.
Okay, so
we had owned it for quite a few years.
Your stepson was about 7 then?
Yes.
Yeah, and then your son.
Yes, yeah. And I was pregnant. One of the funny things, I was pregnant throughout working, and I never took time to get a Lamaze class or anything. So my water breaks, and I just show up to the hospital, and I'm like, I'm ready. I'm not ready. I wasn't ready, but I just worked throughout my pregnancy. And so that's
like women have done throughout history.
Yeah. And I didn't really prepare myself for having a baby. And then I took that time off, but that was different because I don't know. I just controlled how that worked, and I made it work, and I didn't think about that. Then I hit burnout after my husband's illness, and we hired employees out of desperation, which I would never do again. Ever. Nobody. I've seen other small businesses do it, and I'm like, please don't wait till you're desperate to hire anybody. It was a big mistake. It was a big learning lesson. How about that? Because I'm glad I will never have to relearn that lesson again.
Yeah, and people don't realize that, employees have costs, but then they don't realize that the state and the taxes and all that sort of stuff has this associated cost that is just hideous for the employers. So
it was, yeah. That was the thing we were trying to avoid, but we are also growing a business at the same time. And with having it being brick and mortar and with how the government controlled markup on our so we were only allowed a 30% markup on the wine and beer. So that made wiggle room really difficult. And then when you're competing,
it's totally different to clothing,
which
or
is
makeup.
like 100% markup or
more.
So we were controlled, and I'd say we were selling millions of dollars at the time of product, but that's not what we were taking home at all. And so people would see on the outside that it looked like a crazy amount of business, and it's like, but you don't understand what 30% looks like. And then and then I'm running a business on that and competing where the grocery store or the person down the street's giving a 20% off. Well, that's like everything. And so I'd say we did really well on surviving and thriving in that small margin.
So in this new business, and I'll just take it back quickly, is that the retail convenience stores have it even tougher. They have, I think, the smallest margins for any of the retail spaces. So, it's not what we all assume. We think it, as you said, something that looks really going gung-ho is just probably just barely squeaking through. So taking this lean startup that you did, you're now applying it by Sarah Ann. And so why it still appeals to you to go bootstrapping lean startup for this?
Yes.
And it might seem obvious, but I still want to sort of...
Yeah, so I saved up through acting and all my little side things from being creative. And I didn't know what I was going to apply it to yet. And I didn't know that this was going to have a demand yet. And so I was just saving that money for the next thing, because we had sold our company. And another lesson I learned was I would not sell that company without having another thing in the wings or working on another thing. I wouldn't do that again, because it's like I had a river of income right next to my house, and I could live off of that. And then I just dammed up that river by selling that company. And really what I would prefer is having lots of little rivers coming by my house and not damming any one up without having more rivers coming. And so we just dammed up our one cash flow, and I wouldn't do that again.
So I have a question. So each of those little rivers coming through, just as you scaled up your business, each one of them is starting a business again. So even if it's a small business, it still takes almost the same amount of bandwidth, if not more sometimes, of one large entity. So that's very, very brave.
Well, I like I said, I would do it differently, where I was learning the skills to become a better leader within that company. But like I said, I was burnt out, and so was my husband. And so we weren't really in that great mindset, that growth mindset at the time. Towards the end of the company, we were like, no, we're really done. We want to just sell it. And if I were to do all of that over again, I would have decided to work on my mindset, gain the skills to become a better leader, so that I would have had a great force team to maintain the company while I started more things, because I'm always going to be innovating and I'm always going to be starting businesses. Let's just know that about me. So if I could have the skills and leadership to make sure that river's maintaining, so that I could take 20% of my bandwidth and start another company.
So we've got this business experience that you've got, and you've got a great foundation, and it was successful.
Yes.
And you've still got a great marriage.
Yes.
You're successful. So that's, as you said, that's experience. That return on investment was invaluable. And then we go back to the fashion thing. So when did you first fall in love with fashion?
When I was little.
What's the story? How did it make you feel?
So my mom says that, and I remember just wanting to dress myself. I didn't want any help. And so it would be a lot of little random things like there's pictures of me wearing crazy tights with a big frilly dress over it, and then my like rain smock and jellies. And it's not for weather at all. It's just for how I felt, you know. And so I'm more savvy today, but style has always been about how I feel and how I want to show people how I feel. And I feel like fashion to me has always been an expression of myself, along with how I want to communicate with others. So what that means is, like when I teach style courses and stuff, I talk about how fashion isn't about fitting in, but say you were invited to a black tie event. You're not going to wear something completely out of hand because you want to pay respect to who invited you and to the event. It's not about fitting in, it's about respecting someone else and the environment that you're invited to, or something like that. So I think that there's this whole little language that you can speak throughout fashion. And so it means a lot to me.
I love the fact that you identified wearing your jellies with your funky tights, with your probably a tutu,
Yep.
As being style, and not fitting into the typical put together, standardized, homogenized look.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's really lovely. And so then it sounds like you're sort of now saying that style is being respectful and blending, you know, not blending in, being respectful for the tone,
Mm-hmm.
but improvising and innovating with your own je ne sais quoi sort of expression.
Yes. Yes.
So that's really intriguing. So this is a result. So these are definitely an expression of what you discovered or
Mm-hmm.
rediscovered.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Something old with your art history, but also culturally, because we've got Celtic, Anglo-Saxon blood, and so this is what our great-grandmothers and
Yes.
would have worn. So is there do you feel a connection there historically to these items?
Yeah, in a way I do. I feel like I don't know about other areas of the world. Like I've only lived in America. I've visited other areas, but I am always kind of chilly in this area, and I feel especially in places that not like an airplane, for example. It might be a chilly airplane, which this would be practical, but also it's an airplane and there's people in your space and it's almost like a cocoon. So I feel like, and also people that want to be modest and cover areas of their body that they enjoy using this garment for that. And I feel like, for example, like this one, it has that cable and that design, and I'm an Irish girl. but
with these historically, they were worn in Wales as well? Wales?
Yes, so yeah.
So this reminds me of that beautiful Welsh word, which is what we call our cottage, a cwtch. Cwtch, C-W-T-C-H, and it means a hug.
Yeah,
Like it's a safe place. It's a nest or a safe place or a hug or an embrace that, that's just very comforting and safe to be in. Thank you for watching the video. I know that you're excited in following these people. Hit like, hit subscribe, and hit the notification bell. And we look forward to hearing from you and seeing you in your journey.